Resuming debate. Reprise de débat. The honourable member for Carleton.
Thank you. I'll try to stay grounded, Mr. Speaker. You know, we're told all the time that activist government is like a gigantic fairness machine, transferring money from the wealthy to the needy. Why then does this machine seem so often to send money in the opposite direction? The Bombardier bailout is a case study. The Liberal government has now offered $1 billion middle-class tax dollars to a company that paid $8 million to just one of its executives in 2015. According to Statistics Canada data, the lion's share of federal income tax that will fund this bailout comes from people earning between $45,000 and $90,000 a year. The federal government got more money from this income cohort than any other, money that it will use to bail out a company whose controlling family is said to be worth $1.77 billion. In the same year as the company began seeking that bailout, it had enough money to pay $32 million to 8 named executive officers, an average of $4 million per person. That does not just make them part of the infamous 1%, but the 0.01%. Now, a company has the right to pay its leaders anything it wants with its own money. But this bailout represents a massive wealth transfer from the working class to the wealthiest of the wealthy. Now, some will argue that rich pay packages are necessary to attract top executive talent. But Liberals explicitly reject that argument. They just won an election on a platform of raising taxes on anyone earning $200,000 a year, which is the Liberal definition of rich. Yet Bombardier paid 40 times that amount to a single executive. If executive compensation were capped at $200,000 a year in 2015, Bombardier would have saved enough money to fund 400 more jobs at $75,000 a year. But of course, this is not about jobs. If it were, the budget would not have simultaneously raised taxes on small business job creators, incidentally, by $1 billion between now and the next election. The same $1 billion that the Liberals want to give to Bombardier. Taking money from job creators to give it to billionaires does not create jobs. If this were about creating jobs, the company would not have rejected the federal government's initial bailout of just a few weeks ago. It turns out beggars can be choosers. Nor would the vice president of the company's C-Series program have said a bailout is not needed to save jobs, but merely, quote, an extra bonus. Mr. Speaker, is it really the responsibility of middle-class taxpayers to fund extra bonuses for the wealthy and well-connected? Unfortunately, it would seem so. According to a recently leaked government report entitled Examining Ontario's Business Support Programs, quote, the conclusion of our review is that Ontario's business support programs favor the largest and oldest companies, the companies least likely to be in need of support, end quote. About 200 companies, or 0.1% of Ontario businesses, got 30% of government subsidies, the report calculated. Why? Because the wheels of corporate welfare are greased with money. Money for consultants to help navigate Ontario's 65 corporate aid programs in 9 ministries, money for lobbyists to push an application along, and money for donations to the politicians who will make the final decision. The Post-Media's Anthony Furey recently revealed that companies that donated to the Ontario Liberals enjoyed massive taxpayer-funded grants. While Bombardier does not donate to federal politicians or parties, the Lobbyist Commissioner's website shows the company met with designated federal public office holders 54 times in the last 6 months. Now, all of this activity is legal, ethical, and properly reported, but it costs money. So those without money cannot do it. Because they cannot influence the government's commercial decisions, they rarely benefit from them. The wealthy can afford to work the system, and so the system works for them. Examples abound. Ontario's taxpayer-financed electric vehicle incentive program recently helped super-rich car lovers buy the $1 million Porsche 19 Spyder, according to CBC. Or there's Ontario's so-called Green Energy Act, which forces higher hydro bills on seniors living on fixed incomes in order to subsidize well-connected so-called clean energy companies that produce almost no reliable power. Elsewhere, government-mandated taxi cartels shut out competition and empower millionaire taxi plate owners to exploit cab drivers and passengers. It's not that government failed to stop these injustices. Rather, it caused them. It is like the Sheriff of Nottingham posing as Robin Hood. We should fight for social justice, and we Conservatives believe in doing so. But the best way to start is by getting government and the wealthy interests that influence it off the backs and out of the pockets of the middle class and less fortunate. In so doing, we can truly champion the underdogs among us so that they can be part of a better and brighter future for us all. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
So, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the member's words. Don't necessarily agree with them, and I find it somewhat interesting. You know, on the one hand, we have the Conservative Party, and listening to the member speak, would say, forget about Bombardier, forget about trying to help the potential of thousands of employees in a very important aerospace industry, not only for the province of Quebec, but other provinces that are directly or indirectly also affiliated. Then you have, on the other hand, the New Democratic Party, who is saying, throw it all in, give more, do this, do that, and members of the Bloc. I think the Liberal Party has had the right approach, and that is to work and try to develop and see what we can do to enhance the aerospace industry in all regions of our country. My question is related more specifically to, he talked about tax fairness. This government has brought forward, and my question is why would the member vote against a budget that delivers a tax decrease to 9 million Canadians? That is what the member is voting against. Why would he do so if he truly believes that the middle class should have more money, when in fact that's exactly what they're getting?
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, the budget in question will give that member a nice big tax reduction, even though he makes $150,000 a year. But the single mother earning $45,000 a year will get no income tax reduction whatsoever. Second point on Bombardier. The Liberal approach on Bombardier has been to do $2 billion worth of harm to the company by blocking the expansion of the Toronto Island Airport and in the process cancelling the order of $2 billion worth of jets by Porter Airlines, which lands at that airport. To do $2 billion worth of damage and then come forward along with the Government of Quebec to offer $2 billion worth of taxpayer help. Mr. Speaker, our approach would be to do neither. To let the company expand its operations and sell to another great Canadian company by landing in the heart of downtown Toronto, which has the simultaneous effect of cutting traffic between Pearson Airport and downtown business section in Canada's busiest city, and giving a free enterprise solution that will cost nothing to taxpayers to a company that's seeking to attract new revenues. By contrast, the Liberals' approach is to take $1 billion from everyday middle-class Canadians and give it to bail out a company that is controlled by a billionaire family and which paid $32 million in executive compensation in the same year that it was seeking handouts from the government.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. It's been a long time since we've had the opportunity to debate, It's a bit surprising to hear a Conservative so concerned about social justice and the poor when his government handed out tax cuts in the billions to banks and big oil. I'm also surprised to learn that the Conservative position on Bombardier is to do nothing whatsoever and abandon Bombardier. I'd like to hear him say that when he comes to our part of the country. What does he think about the Liberal deception when they talk about reducing taxes for the middle class when 6 out of 10 people will not benefit from it? Those most in need are those who earn less than $45,000 a year. Those people have been abandoned by the Liberal budget. The Honourable Member for Carleton. What the Honourable Member just said is true. He's right. People earning $45,000 a year will get absolutely nothing in terms of tax breaks from the federal government. So that's true. But I find it ironic that a so-called socialist... Oh, he corrected me. Not a so-called socialist, a true socialist, in his opinion. He considers that a compliment. He wants to give $1 billion to a company that's owned by a billionaire family. It's true, Mr. Speaker. We now see that it's the socialists and people on the left who want to redistribute the wealth, yes, but they want to take it from the poor and people in the middle class and give it to the richest. But we want to do exactly the opposite. We want to let people keep the money they earn, they deserve, from the fruit of their own labor, from their investments and their merits, and that's what sets us apart. That's what sets our approach to poverty apart from left-leaning parties.